just my bonnet. No, it's not a test, only the best.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to speak the Queen's English like an aristocrat, open your throat, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Not like what this fella does. All this is really is an alternative route to the Alps. To or from the Alps is slightly irrelevant. Probably without tolls and fees setting, you tend to get pushed towards Holland, Luxembourg, Germany. Not as far as Germany, because then you're going to end up going through Switzerland to get to Geneva and the Alps, French Alps. It's only a few minutes here or there, and it's the speed of the autobahns that do it. Whether you can go 130 or 110 kilometres an hour, but if you're not going to do that, you're not taking advantage of it. Take a more direct, more fuel-efficient route. But this, what is an attractive stop-offs, take it all in suggestion for you. I'm just expanding with memories and recollections of observations past. Germany seems for me to always promote memories of TEFL teaching business English. To speak posh English, like the Queen, a number of people particularly spoke like between the wars and before. You need particular olfactory manipulations. Your olfactory area, you need to open up your throat, basically. Any of these mouth movements feel particularly unnatural. You've been learning them since you were a child. And it can be a particularly intimate relationship between student and teacher when you're teaching the finer points of productive spoken language. You'll need to record yourself and listen back ad infinitum to refine this just for yourself before you start teaching. But my experience was in northern Italy, in Milan. A divorced housewife looking to remarry for money the second time round. She wanted to talk posher, to bag better. The director of the school was heavily pushing the young graduate teacher towards the middle-aged divorcee. These olfactory manipulations can be a slow progress, and she was concerned about the cost that this might entail, and he was suggesting the bargain that with a little bit of it wouldn't be so bad to befriend the teacher, and the teacher, he gets free rent, I think, a place to live so that you can afford to main and pick up other occasional and random classes for the director. The toy boy language teacher taken in to learn. Not really an April to December relationship, but compromising a princess's ideal, I think. To a certain extent, the further you venture, the more you can charge in fees and hourly rate. Austria, Vienna seemed a reasonable compromise. Not often diagonal through Belgium, Germany, into Austria. Salzburg on the way back was very nice. We did sample lessons in all the Ruhr towns on the way back as well. Along the Rhine, there are some very nice German towns. The last days of the internet cafe, just as the magic's fading, the children tell the parents that they're off to do some homework on the internet, and they sit there on each other's laps in the internet cafe watching pornography with the proprietor there really not knowing what to do and shrugging that his days are bound to be numbered, but you might as well reap it while you can. Oh, little cubicles were packed. It's my memory of Karlsruhe, I think it was called. I had a lucky 13 hours to Vienna in a little car with vegetable oil 50% mixed with the diesel at a time when this was worthwhile. Sat in the slipstream of a big bus for miles and kilometres and miles. Couldn't see a thing other than the back of the bus, and judging it keeps you alert. A kiddie at school used to do this with his bicycle. He had his racing bicycle. He used to almost glue his front wheel to the back of the school bus, and he'd get back 5 miles to home as quick as the bus would, just by using the slipstream. This is all dependent on the quality of the bus driver, really. Did know he was there. And the cyclist has had an accident. My return from Vienna was sooner than I'd expected. I like to include food and recipe suggestions there for you. It's important to me. Frozen rice dish out the freezer. When I was on the ferry to Calais, it was still rock solid. I couldn't eat it. I didn't eat it for much of the way. Close to Vienna, I did tuck in. It was past its best. It had defrosted. It was hot summer weather. And this little tip, rice can be nasty if it's not fresh. It can give you microbes that can give you explosive diarrhea. It was obvious that it wasn't good when I was eating it, but it was what I had. And I was hungry after 13 hours. I had the appointment in the morning, the training, recruitment, come elimination process. It was the first time. Time that I'd been in a room with so many experienced TEFL teachers from America and Canada. A lot of them, their grandfather had come from Vienna or something like that. So incredibly cutthroat and nasty. These were experienced people, much more knowledgeable about the industry than I. So nasty and bitchy to each other, and all in the same room, to each other's faces, knowing exactly that that's how it needs to go, reporting back from the client, not in their own words probably, what they have said about the other teacher or not. But then it goes the same like when they're grading the student. When they're grading them, you need so much more work. That's what keeps them in business. The student doesn't really know the tiny little things they're picking on, how tiny and little some of them are. The directors of the school, they're sort of trying lots of different therapists for their different clients, looking for a miracle. But all the therapists are completely cutthroat, ruthless nutcases. They're like sad gamblers seeking out a lucky rabbit's foot. my manger off rice problem that I only created myself. My solution was to put a wad of rolled up toilet paper into my pants to absorb things from my growling stomach as it more or less dribbled out involuntarily from my lower end. A little bit like having a period moment. I'm in the middle of this interview lecture that's dragging on and on with all these experienced, jaundiced teachers trying to upstage each other, intimidate each other, with no real creativity, just formula or rapport in the room at all. It was a horrible room to be in. It would be nicer to be in my own pants. But I didn't have any panty liners. I did have to get up to check things when I thought things were going to get particularly explosive. The very pretty on-site recent graduate that lived in an apartment with her former client just off Vienna's main square picked up my diarrhea-soaked wad that I'd lost on the way to the toilet from my seat in the classroom. I'd driven for the best part of a day. I couldn't not attend class, could I? The interview. She was so nice, she completely understanding. She'd had the same thing, and she might have been talking about period issues. She did find me sample lessons when the main instructor was making an example of me. And yes, while I was almost too embarrassed to show my face, it was worth it to see hers again. Everybody else in the room so self-absorbed, they wouldn't have noticed a thing. The instructor, flown in from South Korea, very possessive, obsessive partner that he'd married, but on the phone to him all through the lesson, and he had to take the calls. It was an example of what not to do. Teaching English as a foreign language, you're teaching the competition how to replace you, a bit like America worries about what they've done with their products in China. Perhaps that's a reason for Brexit. Essentially giving away spies, but the whole idea is that you trade with the country, the basics. But if you're post-Brexit, this is paid rent for several months, got residency permit, huge investment for very little chance of repaying reward, you might choose to teach English as a foreign language. Or the online option, and see if anything comes from that. Rate your profile, advertise pay Google to employ someone when you haven't necessarily got the prospect of any income from it yourself. That's what Google advertising is. TEFL, teaching English as a foreign language for so many years. The gold standard was the lingua franca, comparison, translation between French and English from one dominant language to the next. There's a whole trope of false friends, they get called, between English and French. Not so many for other languages, but it still gets repeated as beware of false friends when you're learning to teach English as a foreign language. These false friends are similarities between words in the two different languages. Transient in meaning, often ending up as opposites. There's been a lot of wars between the two countries. 100 years worth at one point in time. TEFL has become hugely more difficult since Brexit. Let's take it as read that no one in France, hardly anyone in France particularly, is interested in learning English, but other countries in Europe are. After the global financial crisis, it seemed particularly, or even only, option to teach business English in Germany. Corporate would pay for it. There are huge But my real revulsion about Vienna isn't anything to do with their almost immediate explosive diarrhoea, or even what was reported at the time as an endemic problem in Austria of people being kept in basements and Scandinois type scenarios, not too much of it. It was the right off the King's Square near the train station. There was the most miserable looking Asian women, Eastern women, Chinese, Thai, Philippine, dressed up in a caricature of what's supposed to be raunch type fishnets, just waiting in one window, half a dozen together. First thing in the morning, an industrial type red light district just off the main tourist attraction. I don't want to go anywhere near it, don't want to have anything to do with it, don't want to know that it exists. But there's a lot of this in Germany. I don't know if they're all as miserable. It's like a perversion of the nudist movement. FKK is often called.